Hey everyone, welcome to or welcome back to podcast Badass Confidence Coach. Today we are talking about, this is a two-parter. We have to do a two-parter again because I cannot talk about this subject matter in just 45 minutes to an hour. I can't. It's too big of a topic and one that I talk about with clients all the time, and it's about patterns. So the patterns in our lives that we all have. So, why are we, or why do I repeat patterns that I know hurt me? Common question, and one that is we're going to get into. Okay. So have you ever had that moment where you look at your life and you think to yourself, like, why am I here again? Why am I here again? You see, maybe not consciously, but you're aware that I'm repeating something. And oftentimes, what I'm working with people in therapy about and in coaching people out of is you got to move out of these patterns that you're in. Therapy often is the place where people realize that there even is a pattern in their life, that they're even repeating behaviors and ways of thinking that are not helpful for them. So, when you ask yourself this question of like, why am I here again? And it can be confusing. It can muddle your thoughts because it's not the same person. It's a different person, and it can be years later. It's not the exact same situation every time. It's the details are different, right? And that's why it can be difficult to see for our own selves subjectively in our own lives that we are in these patterns, right? The emotional pattern, though, the patterning emotionally feels very familiar.
Hmm.
Like, oh,
Like it's scary. It's
I
bringing
know
something
this
up.
feeling.
Yeah.
I know this feeling of discouragement. I know this feeling of rejection. I know this feeling of just feeling down, put aside, second, of defensiveness. I know this feeling of sadness. I've been here before.
Yeah.
Many times over in relationships. But we don't see it often does take someone else in our life to say, who looks in at our life from like the outside goes, do you see these are patterns here? Because they feel familiar and I've talked about it on the podcast before. There's something about, even though it's painful and it doesn't feel good, there's a familiarity that we do get used to, right? So, a pattern might be you overgive again. You've stayed in the relationship too long again. You've abandoned yourself to others and things again, right? You're once again, you're chasing the unavailable person. And you always knew that they were unavailable to you, but here you are chasing that same type of person again, right? You shut down. We talked about shutdown several episodes back. You're shutting down again,
Right.
right? You choose what drains you again. These are all these patterns, right? You tolerate it. You tolerate what doesn't feel good to you in your life. Again. Okay. I'm doing this on purpose for you to think, to jog your own thoughts and your memories about patterns in your own life. And then what happens is it's so frustrating. And I've done this. I've done this. I mean, who hasn't? Then you understand the feeling and you're like, why do I keep doing this? Why? Right? why don't why do I know better? I know better and I still end up doing this. I still end up in these relationships with these men and these women. I know better, Anna.
Yeah.
You know better not to do this. Why? So why is these smart, self-aware individuals repeat patterns that hurt them over and over and over again? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to really get into it today and in next week's episode. Right. Next week, we're going to talk more about what you're going to do to get out of it. But right now,
Break the cycle.
Right now, we're going to get into the why. Why do we all do this? Because it's helpful to understand it, right? Because, people, we do not repeat these painful patterns in our lives because we're stupid. We're not stupid people, right? They don't do it because we secretly love suffering. Like, I just love suffering.
Some people do.
Yeah. Some people are masochistic. Sure. Most of us are not masochists. We don't, we don't love it. We just don't know what to do. We don't know how to do it different. So we just keep, there we go, we're repeating the patterns. And we don't do it because, you know, we just need more information. No, we got all the information that we need. We don't need more information, right? Most of the time, we're repeating these patterns that hurt us because these, it's familiar. Like I just said, it's familiar. It's emotionally convincing too. For some reason, we have emotionally convinced ourselves to stay there because maybe there's a piece of it that has worked for us or does feel good to us, and it's what really it's tied to something that's deeper than logic.
Hmm.
It's tied to something emotionally deep for us that it's way deeper than our logic. And that's what we need to understand and we need to get at for ourselves. Okay. So we're gonna talk about why we go back to things that hurt us and people that hurt us, why awareness alone doesn't often change the pattern. So we are talking about in this episode. Next one is going to be what you're going to do to get out of it, because you could have all the insight and all the awareness in the world. That doesn't mean you're going to have behavior change in your life. What these patterns are usually protecting. We're going to get into that. I think that's important to understand. What are we protecting by repeating these patterns in our life? And what does it actually take to break these patterns? What does it take? All right. Okay.
So let me ask you a couple
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
So I believe it's possible to have good patterns also, right? So
Absolutely.
can we at some point, and maybe it's on your agenda because I haven't seen it, but I would think it would be helpful to be able to analyze the success of good patterns,
Right.
and
Yeah.
learn how you made that become successful for yourself so that you can translate that into working on bad patterns. Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. What are good patterns in our lives? What's another word for that?
Well, it depends on the arena you're talking about, but I'm thinking if you're a good pattern could be the fact that you give effort to do something to accomplish certain things in your life over and again. And you're like, oh, I've done this before. I had success. Let's do this exact same effort again.
And I think of this is more surfacey. This is not as deep as we're going to get. So I think to myself, oh, I'm in a good pattern. I'm in a good pattern here. What's another word for pattern? Routine.
In a good
I'm
routine.
in a good routine.
Yeah.
I got some good habits going. So I have a really good pattern set up for myself.
Yeah. But I think
I'm in a good routine. I got good habits going.
But I think you also, hopefully you've given yourself some time to think about how to develop that good routine, right? Like there's pieces of that routine you had to kind of discover.
Yep.
And put it together to turn it into a routine.
Well, that's what coaching is.
Right.
That's what I do all the time, and helping people create new patterns in coaching.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I do all the time is helping people develop new patterns at a deeper level, at an emotional level, because a lot of times we don't understand, we haven't done that deep work of having insight about why we're doing what we're doing. So these episodes are about negative patterns, not the stuff that's not good in our lives.
Yeah.
That's tripping us up, that's holding us back.
Yeah.
But, the other side is the good stuff. I think of those as habits and routines.
Maybe.
Here's a good pattern that I'm in now every time, because here's the thing. I don't have that pattern anymore because I have an awareness. My antenna now is up because of the work I've done with Anna. My antenna is up that kind of guy is not good for me.
Right.
That gal, that girl over there, that woman that I'm very attracted to, normally I'd go up and I'd hit on her and I would do what I do. And that would be somebody that I would ask out on a date. I'd get into something with her.
Yeah.
Relationship, maybe 2, 3, 4. I don't do that anymore because I know what happens in those relationships.
Right. Well, because you worked on the things that help you recognize those moments, which are the things I'm talking about. Like if I can recognize what helps me develop good routines or good habits, the process behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's exactly what I work with my clients on.
Yeah.
That, how to develop an antenna.
Right. There you go.
How to even develop that antenna to be like ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
There's green lights, yellow lights, red lights, right? So this is a yellow light to a red light, full stop, not doing it.
Yeah.
Because in the work that I've done, I've seen that that's not good for me. There's such an allure for that type of atmosphere. Maybe it's happy hour, maybe it's bar, maybe it's, whatever. It's, the pickleball court. But that type of person is somebody that I'm attracted to. But yeah. And I've learned to pay attention to that inner voice telling me,
Sure.
yeah, not, maybe you need to stay away, because I do think we all have we all have we all have it. Some listen more than others. Our intuition or our sixth sense telling us, yeah, that's stay away from that energy.
Yeah.
And then, some of us are just really good at paying attention to the energy of what comes up for us. Others are not good at it or ignore it.
Yeah.
We all have it.
Or they don't even know they can be good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So when we're repeating patterns, what does it really mean for us? What does it really mean? So when I say that patterns can and do hurt us, I'm not just talking about, intimate or romantic relationships in our lives. I'm talking about the repeated emotional loops that we fall into in all kinds of places, persons, and things in our lives, right? It can show up in relationships, yeah. Choosing people who are unavailable. That's a big one for people. It can show up in us, like I said earlier, overgiving, confusing. I said this in another episode, confusing intensity with intimacy. That's a big one. It can be very hard for us to suss out the difference between intensity of a relationship and intimacy in a relationship. Repeating patterns can be just staying in relationships too long, always hoping that that something's going to change, they're going to change, we will change, our dynamic will get better. People get in these patterns of being in these relationships, always hoping that something's going to be different. Tolerating things don't feel right to you. At some level, they don't feel right, but you just tolerate that relationship. And that can be that's any kind of relationship. That could be with a friend. That can be with a coworker, your work husband, your work wife, your work sibling that you've gotten close to in many ways, but there's maybe the relationship has turned, but maybe also there's parts of them that are really not good for you. You're the punching bag and you just tolerate that. You have these patterns in your life where you are the punching bag everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Because you have people pleasing tendencies and you have not learned how to set boundaries and stand up for yourself. I see that all the time. It can show up in relationships, in your personal life, in your professional life, at work. Patterns of I overperform. I'm always overperforming. Burning yourself out, burning yourself out for approval, which is so stressful. Because burning yourself out, you can get yourself sick doing that. Attaching your worth to your productivity. Your worth is, and this is validated, and this is a hard one for many people, especially I think in corporate America, because you're basically told your value is based on your productivity.
Right.
And that's a hard one. And for me then to come in as a coach and say, no, that's not true. And you have to adopt, yes, productivity is important, but your worthiness is not based on how much you produce for the company, the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars that you bring in. That's not about your value as a human being. And that can get very confusing, and those waters can get very muddied for people about, worth, self-worth, and so I have to repeat these patterns. Always feeling like you've never done enough, we repeat the patterns of always thinking I'm not ever doing enough. Because somehow, somewhere along the way, we may have gotten that messaging. How does repeating patterns show up emotionally for us? Overthinking, people pleasing, perfectionism, shutting down, numbing out, self-criticism, right? Avoiding conflict in our lives. What makes it so painful is that a lot of people, we're not blind to the pattern. That's the thing, is that we're not blind to it. We see it. We see this pattern. We've talked about it before. We've thought about it before. We've journaled about it. If you're a journaler, you've heard yourself explain it to other people. You've heard yourself explain it to your therapist before. Like, I know I'm doing this, right? And yet when they're in the moment, they're like, shit, why do I still feel pulled towards this old thing, this old pattern? Ugh. I know it.
Bad habits are hard to drop.
Yes, they are so hard.
They're so hard to drop.
You're right. And that's the part that people get it. That's where shame comes in, because that's the part where people start to feel ashamed. Like, I know this, Anna. I know this, and I still do it.
Right.
Why am I still doing it? And I see it like, here comes shame walking in the door.
Right.
And now here it is with you.
Right.
Like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Yeah, you ought to know better. Why do you
You've
keep
done
doing
this
that?
before so many
It's
times.
like the devil on your shoulder,
Yeah.
right? Shame, but having shame, we'll get into this, but you having shame does not help you understand it.
Right.
Shame doesn't help you understand anything. Shame is just this dark, I think, evil way of feeling and thinking that just gets inside you, because it comes in the back door and gets inside you and says, I ain't going nowhere. Not until you really work on it.
Right.
It's not helping you. It's like a glomming on of, I have these patterns. I repeat these patterns. I know they're not good for me. I am aware of it. I've worked on this in therapy. I've worked on this on myself and my self-help books I've read and podcasts I've listened to. I know it's there. I don't know what to do about getting rid of it, but I know it's there. I know what it is. If you have any sort of interest in being psychologically minded, many of you know this about yourselves already, right? So why are we repeating? Why do we repeat? All right, we're going to get into it. Number one, familiar feels true to us, right? So this is one of the biggest reasons. It's familiar to us. What is familiar often feels right, even when we know it hurts us. It's how it feels. It feels right. If inconsistency was familiar to us, steadiness might feel weird. So if inconsistency is something that I've talked about this before, something being egocentric, it's familiar. We know it. It's like the bedfellow that you're like, oh, shoot, you're here again? Ugh. Okay, just lie there and be quiet then. Just lie there and don't take the covers. Just lie there and be quiet. Well, that's what repeating patterns is like. We don't like it, and we're familiar with it. It lies next to us at night and it hangs out there. And it doesn't really pull the covers. It just hangs out there. We can sleep. It doesn't feel great. I don't feel comfortable with you being here, and you're here. So we learn to live with that, and we sort of make ourselves accept it, right?
Are we kind of then enabling it slightly?
Yeah, in a way.
I mean, we're not kicking that
we don't really get we
person
could be.
out of the way,
right? We could be enabling. Yeah, right. I
don't know.
I haven't thought about it like that, but yeah, it's a way to think about it. If inconsistency, feels familiar to us, then steadiness might feel kind of strange.
Yeah.
If you grew up, and if chaos was familiar, and I grew up with a lot of chaos in my life, and I am very familiar with chaos. I kind of even now still like chaos. Like, I like the fun parts of chaos. I don't like the dysfunctional bad parts of chaos. But I grew up in a large family, and large families, we got a lot of chaos a lot of the time. But here's the work, that for me personally, I've worked very hard on this. Chaos, for many of us, feels familiar. Calm can feel very boring. And I've had to learn to live in, sort of lean into chaos, but at the same time, I love calm. I love calm more now as I'm older, and the years go by. I'd rather, calm isn't boring for me. Calm is calm. But when in my younger years, calm did feel boring, and I did love chaos. Like, I remember, I've learned to adapt. You learn to adapt, and any of my siblings can probably, everybody could all be sitting here and attest to this, and when I had friends who were from smaller families, and this is in my 20s and 30s, and I think you've heard me tell the story before, they're from two kids, like you, just 2 kids, 3 kids, quieter homes. And not that numbers has anything to do with it. You can have still a lot of chaos and have 1 kid. It's the dynamic and the energy of what's going on in that family. But more people, more voices, people tend to get louder, trying to be heard. But when I was with my friends, when my kids were little, I remember thinking to myself, why can't my friends have like 2 or 3 conversations at once? Like, why are they? Because my one friend's like, I can't talk to you and be in that conversation. Or maybe I was like talking, or I don't know, like maybe it was crosstalk or something. There'd be a bunch of like moms at a play date or getting together for like, girls' night out. And I remember my one friend saying that to me she was like, are you listening to me? I'm like, yes, I'm listening to you. I'm listening to that conversation, and I'm fully listening to you. And she's like, well, I don't know how you can do that. I'm like, oh, I can do that. I can do it pretty well too.
Yeah.
Because I grew up that way. There's this great picture of me with my sister, and it's so, to me, exemplifies our growing up years because the kids were little. I was holding Marissa. Marissa's like 5 months old. We're at the beach. I was holding Marissa, and at the same time, she was giving, someone took this picture. She was doing something with her daughter who was a year. I had something with her baby. She's doing something with Kara. I have Marissa in my arms. So she's got one hand to her daughter. Her other hand is feeding me a sandwich. I'm taking a bite of a sandwich. She's got the sandwich in my mouth. I'm biting a sandwich, holding Marissa. Her other hand is doing something with her daughter. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this picture. It was a candid shot. We don't know it's being taken. I'm like, that's our life. That's my life growing up.
Yeah.
And that's how here's my sister. Now we're mothers and we're doing this. Like, we just know how to do that.
Yeah.
It's just,
You've got it down.
Yeah, and having been around my family, we got it down.
Yeah.
So that's a chaos. Kind of is like, I guess it's like a calm in a way. And I would still do that today. That's how I roll. You know that. I roll that way.
Yeah.
And I can still do that today. I'll do it with my grandchildren. But that's a pattern that is repeated, and I will repeat because it's not disruptive. It's not hard for me. It doesn't hurt me. Where it has hurt is repeating patterns of not listening, though. And that's something that I've heard from you. I've heard from the kids as they've gotten older. You don't, Mom. Yeah, you can do that, but you don't always listen. And I've realized you're right. I can't multitask, as I've talked about on the podcast before. I need, and I do, I think, you stop and you give somebody your undivided attention, especially when something's really important. If you're just like shooting the breeze and everybody's around family dinner and there's lots of different conversations and they're light, they're loose, they're not deep, people are laughing, kind of ribbing each other about something, that's one thing. But if someone comes to you and they really want to talk to you, no, you take the time, you leave the room, you go into another room, or you say, let's talk about this at another time, and you give them your undivided attention.
Right.
I would like to think that I've always done that, but maybe there are times I have not.
What's a thing you've identified and you've worked on it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. So repeating patterns that hurt us. What else?
Go ahead. So as you're telling these stories, like I feel like there's also the possibility that we get into the trap of manipulating things, patterns, and making them okay. Like,
absolutely.
Right? Like we can kind of massage it just a little bit so that when it does come up, we might have an influence on it slightly.
Yeah.
And we're good with the fact that it's coming up again. Right? Because
like
it's really
I just said,
not that bad.
It's familiar.
Right. It's familiar.
We go towards what's familiar, even if deep down inside we know it's probably not the best way to deal, to cope, to think, to feel. And it's familiar.
Yeah. So you're kind of tricking yourself, right? To be okay.
You're telling be okay. It's your narrative. It's a story you're telling yourself.
Yeah. But
you're telling yourself something.
But in the context of like the family stories you're telling, that's one thing. But in the context of relationships, and you're making it be okay. That's not okay.
That's what we do.
Yeah, that's risky.
Yes, we make it be okay.
Yeah.
When even deep down inside, we're like, well, it's not okay.
Right.
But I'm going to make this be okay.
Yeah.
Right. So a burning love was familiar. Ease of a new relationship might feel very suspicious to us. If you felt like you had to earn love in your family of origin, if overfunctioning is something that you're very familiar with, I overfunction at work, I overfunction at home. I see this a lot in adult children of alcoholics. I see this a lot in adults who grew up in families where there was drinking and drugging. They are like overfunction to maintain some control. Got to have that control. I see that quite a bit. And those adults who come to me, and I am going to use therapy and coaching. You probably all have noticed that I'm doing that in these episodes because many reasons why people come to me in the beginning is similar to therapy and coaching. What I do, the work we do is different. Sometimes people have been in therapy for years, but they don't, it's really unbelievable to me how we are as humans. I mean, they went to therapy and they worked on a lot of issues, but they didn't see, I pointed out something to them, like say in coaching, I'm like, you worked on the addiction, your family of origin issues, your unresolved issues, but this one little detail, this niche part of you, you just didn't get to it. you got really well. You really did heal from a lot of things you were working on in those years in therapy, 5 years ago with that therapist. And now you're here for coaching, but I have to talk to you about something I'm seeing today. And maybe it just didn't come up 5 years ago too, because you're doing so much good work with that other person. There's so much you needed to unpack and uncover and take apart and look at. Like you put it on the table and you're looking at all these issues, and this is what happens. And you're like, oh yeah, I never did look at that piece. I'll pull out a piece, like the overfunctioning piece, because the overfunctioning works very well for us, I think. If you're somebody who, I think I see it a lot at work where overfunctioning really does, because these are the higher achievers. They overfunction, and they're the people who are, making their way up the ranks, or people who are bringing in really good money because they were the ones who were the really great students. They're the ones who went into post grad work. This is the people who have a really beautiful, organized home. You know, is it overfunctioning? And like, well, yeah, but it's worked for me. Okay, but you see the pattern, and
Yeah.
let's talk about how it hasn't worked for you. Oh, okay. We're gonna talk about that right now. Yeah, we need to. We need to, because it's kicking you in the ass and you don't see it. I see it. I'm listening to you. I'm watching these patterns. I'm listening to these patterns.
Right.
And your blind spot is that you don't see it. This is what you're paying me to do. This is what I do.
Yeah. I mean, that person could also be, they might be getting coached to over exert, right? If you're talking in the context of work, like the expectations, the bar might be constantly being raised to the point where they feel like they have to,
Well,
right?
in the professional sense of coach, yeah, I hear. What do you mean? Like
Well, if you're talking about
somebody at work, maybe
overperforming, over,
they're not a. You mean I'm talking about like they're not a coach who's hired by the company.
right.
They're getting air quote coached by their boss to
Well,
overfunction.
or the system that
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
part
yeah,
of,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The system can coach as well,
They're
right?
advised.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you feel like, oh man, I have to continue to deliver. Maybe you don't really, right? Maybe you need to take a step back, and maybe that's your perception of how you should be, but
Yeah.
that might not be real,
Yeah.
right? It might
Yeah. That's a
not
good
be.
point. It's a good
I
point.
don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, you said something that made me wonder, is it possible to overcorrect then? Like if you said,
Sure.
right? Like you
Sure.
could go the other way too much.
Sure. I don't see that too often. I don't see it.
Yeah.
It's not as common.
I'm just thinking from
This is a really hard one for people. This is really hard. It's hard to overcorrect on this. It's hard to stop repeating patterns. I mean, there's a lot of insight and behavior change that has to go into this one. So I don't see people overcorrecting too much. I'd actually probably rather see some overcorrection than
yeah.
under.
But as a coach, is that in your mind as you're coaching
No,
somebody?
I have no, because if anything, people who are not a great fit for me for coaching are people who they say, well, and I've talked about this before. I mean, they say they want it, and they're like, here's my credit card, how much you charge, like, no problem. And then, and I've learned, I started doing this years ago, sussing out who are the good fit clients. That's why I say, let's get on a discovery call together, because there are people who I can pay for coaching, no problem. Some people finances is an issue. Some people finances is not an issue at all. I have to be scanning for if they're able to be coached. Not everybody's coachable. Not everybody can be coached. They think they want to be coached, but then when they get in there with me and they get on the calls and they get the action steps, they're like, oh, I don't really want to do this.
Yeah.
Oh, this is harder than I thought. Oh, I have homework this week. And it's never me telling you. That's not what coaching is for anyone, for all of you to know. I mean, that's not what coaching is. I don't tell you what to do. We together collaborate. We come up with what you're going to like. What's your accountability going to be this week? It's always in agreement with my client. My client says no, then we don't do it. It's always what the client wants. So the client says they want this. We come up with action steps. I put them together for them, and they don't follow through.
Right.
That's what I see. It's not overcorrection. It's just let's get you to baseline.
Sure. Okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
We got to just get you to baseline. You're way under baseline. We got
Yeah.
to get you to baseline. So if I ever were to see overcorrection, that would be pretty cool, actually, to see that. maybe I've seen overcorrection and like, I'm the word that's coming up for me is boundaries. You're overcorrect. I don't know. Can you overcorrect on boundaries? I don't think so. Yeah,
That's
no,
not a
no.
good,
No, it's not.
no.
Yeah.
I ask these questions
I'm curious why you even asked, like, what are you
well,
thinking?
because I think sometimes it's fun to understand what's going on inside of your head as a coach, right? Now, you're coaching people.
Right.
There's unspoken things, a million of them that are going on in your head in terms of the process that you're taking somebody through or hoping to.
My job is to it's, as a coach, like I had a great compliment a few weeks ago. My coaching client we were in my office and he said to me, Anna, you have no idea, but you've been working overtime. You've been working double time. And I said, oh, really? What do you mean? He goes, what you say to me, the work we do here together, I go home and I share all of it with my wife, and she's learning vicariously through you in our conversations together because she's dealing with many of the same issues he's dealing with in his work life. She is in her work life.
Yeah.
And he said, "So you're doing double the work because she takes everything that I share and my work with you, and she's implementing it into her life." He's like, "You should actually be charging double." We kind of, and I'm like, "What a great compliment and how wonderful." So my job is to, with my coaching clients, I'm laser focused on them, and also I take a wide angle view. I'm looking at them from this perspective as well. So, that's how I think. I
Yeah.
think about those are the questions that I'm asking. I think about I come from a place that my client's not thinking. That's what you're paying me for in many ways, is to ask these questions. And I get like, it's a good question. Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I haven't thought about that before. And they are good questions. They
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
and it's like, because I say this all the time. We are me, I. We are subjective. When you bring another person into your life and you have psychological safety and you allow them in, they're going to ask questions that you've never thought of. And that's the beauty of coaching and therapy, that somebody comes into your life and is looking, from third person saying, hey, have you thought about that? Take a look at that. Like, well, let me coaching, let me guide you over here. I'm going to coach you up on this.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. There's having been in therapy and having been coached myself, those are questions and thoughts you will probably never have for yourself. That's the beauty of the profession that I'm in. That unless you've been in, if you've never been in it, you don't really know what I'm talking about. I hope you have a curiosity about it. That's why you're listening to this podcast. And I hope that you will go from listening to taking action in your own life and paying for a coach and paying for therapy or using your insurance if you're here in the United States. If you, but most of I don't take insurance anymore because I've been doing this so long, and insurance pays us so very little. However, you can find some really great therapists if you do psychotherapy who are on your insurance. You have to do some work. You'll find really good therapists. That's the beauty of this is I love it. Is being able to help people, but when you're on the receiving end, when you're the client, having a coach come in and help you look at your life in a way that you just can't do it. It's the coolest thing.
You have a different view.
Yeah, and they can, and I look for your patterns.
Yeah.
I look for this.
Can I give you a visual?
Yep.
And you don't have to pay for this. This is free for you.
Okay.
So you've taken a picture with a camera before, right?
Right.
Not your phone.
Yep.
An actual camera.
Right.
So you look through the viewfinder. On certain cameras, you've got the image that you're going to see when you actually, develop the film, send it to your Instagram, whatever. Do you see the image that the camera is going to take that picture? But on certain cameras, there's a border around the outside which is transparent, right? Which shows you the things that are potentially going to come into the scene, right? Maybe from the front of the person that you're taking a picture of, or the back or the side, but the things that could influence the picture, you see all of that. You see that as the photographer,
Right.
that person doesn't see
Exactly.
necessarily, right? So you have this vision of somebody's life.
The coaches are behind the lens.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got this vision behind the lens of like, okay, I can see you and all your things. I can also see like what the influencers out here that you can't see.
Yeah.
Right?
And let me tell you, as a client, be open to what it is your therapist or your coach sees. Be open to it, because we see, that's a great metaphor, because it is like that. And we see things that you may not want to hear or you may not want to see, but you need to see.
Yeah.
You need to see this. I do this all the time in coaching. You know, there are patterns, and I mean, this is what I pay my coach for. I pay my coach to be direct with me, to see what I can't see, and to tell me, to call me out, and to, not be mean, but gently but firmly push me forward. And that's the best compliment that I get from my clients, is that, Anna, you are direct and you're a warm person. You're direct, though. Well, that's what you're paying me for, to see your patterns and to tell you, hey, this is what I see. You don't see this, but I keep seeing it. And I know you don't really want to see it, but you need to see it. Like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Okay, you're right. And sometimes it's really hard to hear, because sometimes it's what you're doing. It's not always everybody else in your life. It's you. You're doing this. Right. Okay. So, yeah, that's actually a really good example of the camera. Okay. So, why are we repeating patterns? Number one, I just said, because familiar feels very true for many of us. Another reason why we repeat these patterns is, these old patterns, they protected us at one time. And that's why we keep doing it. At one time, they did
Mm.
work for us, right? And this does matter a lot. It matters a lot to people, right? So a lot of painful patterns began as survival strategies for people. People pleasing may have helped you keep connection with others, right? Hyper independence may have protected you from being disappointed. If I stay independent and I take care of myself, I become an island and I put that huge steel wall up around me, that I won't have to feel hurt and I won't have to feel any disappointment from anybody else, because I know that feeling. It happened to me once before, and hell no, I'm not feeling that again. So hyper independence is my wall. Shutting down, may have protected you from just getting overwhelmed by situations and really people in your life. Being controlling, I said this earlier, it just may have helped you survive chaos. There's so much chaos in my life growing up. And me controlling, it could be controlling my bedroom as a child, controlling, everything in it, controlling, like, I mean, this is silly, and this is important. It can controlling my desk, my locker at school, my backpack, how I organize it. Then it was controlling, being cleaning my bathroom, cleaning my bedroom, cleaning my first apartment, keeping it neurotically organized and clean. And a lot of times I think those get overlooked. Why?
Hmm.
Why is this hyper independence, over controlling? Because I'm looking for control, because I'm overcompensating for what I didn't have and didn't feel as a child growing up. You could be trying to, it's a defense mechanism, undoing. You could be undoing what was done to you, where you had no control as a child. You have no control as a child in your life. Your parents control everything. So you're this defense mechanism of undoing. That's my neurotic cleanliness. That's my timeliness. I'm not knocking timeliness. Don't be late for stuff, people. Don't do what Dorit does in Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. The entitled hour and a half late.
Oh,
She's late for everything. It drives me freaking crazy, because she just doesn't even, she's not
we
apologetic
all
about it.
know some
Anyways,
version of her.
yeah. But that's not cool. Don't do
Yeah.
that. But okay. So be timely, but person who's like neurotically timely and gets like, has no tolerance for anybody else. That's about you and maybe your own stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sort of sounds like an overcorrect.
Well, that could be an
right?
overcorrect. Right.
Slightly.
Right. Yeah.
So I just had a light bulb moment. You and I have talked about, how many episodes have we done? We're pushing
Going on 300,
300
up to 300.
episodes, right?
Yeah.
And
280. I don't know.
something, and patterns. Think about all the things in our life that we are influenced by our memories, because really, that's really what this is. Like our memories of childhood,
It's the mind.
right? Like
The
our
mind.
memories drive nearly everything that goes on for us.
I think it's in the unconscious, and that's why we're not always aware of, and I'm not a neuroscientist, and I'm not going to do a deep dive in this, because this is not I'm going to stay in my lane here.
Yeah.
I could talk a little bit about how I know from the field of psychology, are the unconscious drives. So this is like more psychodynamic theory, back to the Freudian stuff. But the unconscious is a huge part of our mind. We have so much we don't understand about how the mind works. They say the unconscious is 90% of our mind, like the the subconscious, let's say it's 7% and the conscious is 3%. Conscious is what we're aware of.
Right.
Subconscious, you can, if you spend some time thinking, and trying to really work on a memory, you can remember something. Oh, yeah, 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 I do remember that. Which, like it says, sibling is jogging your memory. That's in your sub. You're like, oh yeah, I do remember that. Remember when mom and dad, remember we were in that car ride? Yeah, I do remember that. Takes you a bit to kind of bring it to the surface. That's your subconscious. And they say 90% is the unconscious.
That's scary.
Right. Most of it,
That's
but
really
it's
scary.
driving us.
But
We don't understand it. But
yeah,
what I'm talking about here is, working on you getting out of these negative patterns that we keep repeating. That is, we're working on your conscious and working on maybe your subconscious. Oh yeah, yeah. Spend some time working on this. Okay, yeah, I do keep doing that. Yeah, I mean, some of it's very easy for us to recall. Some of it's difficult. I think a lot of this is, well, I don't know why the hell I keep doing this, because maybe it's the unconscious that's going on,
well,
and
maybe.
you have to be hypnotized. You'd have to go into hypnosis,
Yeah.
or you'd have to maybe it would come up in a dream. The unconscious is in your dreams. Now this may have changed since I last studied it. I don't know. I'm no expert here on this. This is not
This
my
to me
wheelhouse.
sounds like a side topic to me, right? Like
Well, this is something that I should have an expert come on and talk about,
right.
because this is not my jam
It's yeah, but what a possibility that this is the major influencer of a lot of things we do.
of patterns we repeat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, having these old patterns that once protected us, I mean, that is, there's reasons why we do it. I mean, you being an overachiever may have helped protect you from a feeling of shame that you grew up with. This is why breaking patterns can feel so uncomfortable, because it did sort of work for us in many ways. You're not just changing your behavior, you're challenging something that once maybe helped you survive. So that could be scary for people. It can feel threatening.
Think about that just for a second. So there could be one event, one time in your life, right? That happened that it was like a massive thing. And there's fallout from that, good, bad, all the things,
Right,
right?
right.
But that it even today, and let's say it happened to you when you were younger, like even today, you're 20 years later, 30 years, 40, 50 years later, it still is tucked away inside, and it influences things that you do, things that you maybe don't do, the way you think about certain things. It's still there even now. That's big.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, I was thinking about, like, is that you know, m- m- without getting into too much detail, you did have me go into a place of trauma for some people, going into
That's a
trauma.
thing to itself, but you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because we repeat patterns. For many of us, there's a trauma background,
Yeah.
and you need to be in therapy for that's not coaching. You need to go see a therapist for that. That's deep, deep work. And you need somebody who's trained in trauma, who's an expert in trauma. This is my training. This is what I do. I don't do a lot of it in my practice right now, but I've been doing it for, gosh, I was first trained in trauma almost 30 years ago, and then continued with the different types of trauma therapies. I think, yeah. So you have to be, yeah, you have to be careful. And I think you need to know when, for clinicians out there to know what's trauma work, and when, for coaches to know when you need to see a clinician. You need to, this is beyond me. And the really good ethical coaches will know, okay, you need to see a therapist for this, because it's not the work I do at all.
Right.
And they don't want to, most of the coaches I know, they don't want to touch it. Because you can find unwittingly that the two of your work with a client is going somewhere deeper.
Mm.
Um, and the really good coaches out there are like, okay, yeah, I don't do this,
Time to hand it
and I
off.
respect and honor what's coming up for you. And this
Yeah.
I got to hand you off to somebody else, either for us to work simultaneously together, or for you to go do that trauma work with a therapist, and then come back to me. We'll pick up where we left off.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can get real deep for some people.
Yeah.
All right,
I think
so
for
yeah,
like the stuff you're talking about is like, choices in relationships.
yeah,
There are
and
things that maybe
behavior
happen.
patterns,
Yeah, but
and
things that might have happened to you when you were younger that
well,
they
yeah,
were not traumatic, but
yes,
but
exactly.
also big enough where it had an influence and
Yeah, and
impact,
right, and that's what
right?
I want to like. Thinking about doing more work on this because we're hearing a lot today about trauma. Everybody's talking about trauma. What have I said before in the podcast? Sort of the kind of they've come into the lay world, the lay people's world that we use in psychology of what are the popular terms today that everybody's using. Narcissism. Everyone's a narcissist. Everyone's getting gaslit. Everyone's got trauma, shame. Everyone's getting triggered. I mean, we used to use triggered. The clients would use triggered. The patients would use triggered when I worked in psych and
Mm,
when I worked in eating disorders. That was 25, 30 years ago. It was appropriate. They were triggered. And that wasn't a word that was really used outside of the psych unit. And now everybody's, I'm triggered, I'm triggered, I'm triggered. Not everything is trauma,
right.
to your point. Not everything is trauma. And I know it's subjective, but I hear it and I'm like, is it? Is it though?
Yeah.
And I talked about it here before because at the holidays back at New Year's when I was talking to my friends about, they were saying, but we're all Gen Xers, and we think of it differently as the Gen Zers. But there is like the DSM-5. There is a clinical criteria. Well, that's clinical criteria for a post-traumatic stress disorder, which is an Axis 1 diagnosis, PTSD. But we all talked about like traumatic things that happened to us. There's big T and little T, and like, yeah, we all have trauma. We grew up in the 70s. We all had trauma.
Right.
But did it have a effect on us later? Some of us maybe, some of us not so much. We dealt with it and we got on. And I know I could say like I had trauma, some I call it some serious trauma, but I've had some flashbacks, not a lot. They didn't affect my everyday life, but I have had some terrible memories of my past and things that happened to me. And I went to therapy and dealt with it. Did I have PTSD? No. Was it hard? Yeah, I got through it. I went to therapy as an adult, got support for it, and I've talked to the people that I needed to talk to, who were there at that time in my life, and doing my work and processing what happened to me, and I'm past it. I feel from it. I'm past it.
Right.
I don't know. We're talking about.
Well, but I think there's a big one because that's your interpretation of trauma.
Yeah.
To you, that was a traumatic experience, right?
Yeah.
You listen to somebody today who just dumps that word out and you're like, is it not? Well, maybe for
We're
them,
overusing these terms.
but maybe for them it is, right? Maybe it really is.
Exactly.
Their version of this big traumatic
It's
thing
subjective.
is different.
Yeah, I just hear it though. I hear like everyone. No, not everybody's a narcissist. You're using the wrong word
Right.
for that person.
Right.
Not everybody. We have narcissistic tendencies. Many people have narcissistic tendencies, and I think with social media, with influencers, we're seeing a lot more narcissists in the world today. That is true. That
Right.
is true. What is it? Only 5%, 3%, 5% of the population actually meets clinical criteria for NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. So yeah, that's not most of us. But yes, we're seeing a lot more people who are narcissistic, especially these social media influencers, but it's not always narcissism. It's something else. We wouldn't always use that phrase.
Right.
Not everybody is getting gaslit. Yeah, you're gaslighting me. Well, I don't know. Not everybody is gaslighting everybody else.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time.
You're talking about the difference in time, in generations, their view of things, right? We're getting into that now.
Yeah.
The words hard work, right? If I say you're a hard worker, right? You have a vision in your mind of what that means.
Yeah.
I say that to
Work
somebody
ethic,
who's
work ethic.
18 and their version of hard work is a much different picture, right? Potentially. Not all the time.
I don't know. I don't know.
I can say it might be.
I've told my clients you're a hard worker. I think they know what I mean.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is though that there's I think time changes how we look at things and maybe in this case how we use words.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go on. Yeah, because that's another conversation.
It is.
It's another. We're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Okay. So why are we repeating these patterns? Number 3, the brain prefers what is known. Okay, so the brain does like predictability. The mind likes predictability. Even painful predictability can feel safer than unfamiliar peace, which I've said over and over and over again in this episode. I've said it in other episodes. We go towards what is predictable. And even if it sucks, Even if it's painful, we will take that over. I don't know peace. I don't know quiet.
Mm.
And I will take the chaos and the painful feelings on the inside of me over the unfamiliar peace. That's why people go back to things they consciously know are not good for them, right? Not because they want the pain, not because they want it, but because uncertainty can feel even more threatening than familiar disappointment. That's kind of sad, and
That's
it's true.
kind of
I
sad.
know, right? This is why people stay too long in relationships or stay too long at the party. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You're staying too long because you know what's going to happen. Leave. We repeat. This is why we repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. And we keep choosing what is emotionally expensive because
Ugh.
this is what
You're
the
like,
brain.
it's like you're paralyzed, right? Like
It is a form of
you're kind of
paralysis. Yeah,
describing
it's like
what
analysis
was that
paralysis.
game show back in the day where it's like you have you can take this, right? Because you can see it, you know what that is, or there's two doors over here that the doors are closed.
Right.
You don't know what's behind it, but you could have door 2, door 3.
Right.
What do you want to do?
Right.
And you're like, well, it's risky door 2, door 3 because I don't know what's over there, right? I can see what's here because it's here, but I could have something way better.
Right.
I just have to have faith
Right.
that
And
I can do
that's
it.
a hard
That's a hard
that's a
one.
hard risk. That's a hard
Yeah.
leap for people.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So why else? Why do we repeat patterns? Our identity gets wrapped around the pattern. That can become a part
Mm.
of we identify as that. So this is another big one, I think, for people. It's, your identity has become that you are the strong one, you are the helper, you are the fixer. Everyone knows that Tim's the fixer. Everyone knows that Anna is the caretaker, the caregiver, the achiever. Oh, that's the achiever. Joe's the achiever, the easy one, or the one who hangs in there, is always around to help out, the one who doesn't need much. Then breaking that pattern, it's not just a behavioral shift, it's an identity shift. If you're going to break out of being the fixer and you're going to stop doing that, you're like, well, wait, but everybody knows me as being the helper, the caregiver, the fixer. And I like that. I like that my family and the neighborhood and our family friends view me as being that way, that I'm the smart one. I'm the overachiever. I'm the one who drives, the nice Beamer and has the house because I'm known for that. I'm known for my beautiful suits and the outfits I wear.
Hmm.
That's my identity. And identity shifts are deeply uncomfortable for people. This is deeply uncomfortable. That's why we stay stuck in these patterns because that's what I was saying earlier. You think you want it, but you haven't spent a whole lot of time really spending time with you thinking about, like, that's a word salad I just did there. Sorry, everybody. You haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what that might look like at the end and in the interim, what goes into making those shifts in identity, the behavior change. But the shift in identity, you now have to think of yourself and identify is different. So now it's not just you need to stop overgiving. It becomes, well, who am I if I stop being the one who always does too much?
Right.
I don't like it, but who am I now? I have that identity. That's a really much bigger question for people is now who am I? What does it mean? All right. Okay. So why do smart people, we're all smart people, why do we still repeat these painful patterns in our lives? Well, this is the part that I really want to normalize for all of us. Okay. Because being insightful does not mean that you automatically stop doing things that hurt you, right? I've said that earlier. Just because you can have insight doesn't mean you're going to stop. A lot of smart people, which is all of us, we stay stuck because we assume that if we understand the pattern, that we'll be able to stop it, right? But awareness is not the same
Mm.
as rewiring, right? Having the awareness and the insight is not the same as rewiring ourselves. You could know exactly what your pattern is, right? And still feel pulled towards it when you're lonely, when you're anxious, when you're hopeful, guilty, tired, attracted, scared, right? You could know it and still go towards it because patterns live deeper than insight, than intellect. They're deep inside of us, all right? They live in the nervous system. Patterns live in our emotional memory, which you were talking about, our memories. They live there in our memories.
Yeah.
Patterns live in our identity, how we identify, our
Hmm.
attachments to things and people and places. It lives in our habits. We talked about that too. It lives in our longing, right? So that's why someone can say, I know this person is not good for me. I know they're not good for me. Yet we're still texting them back. There you
Right.
go. That's the
Yeah.
old pattern coming up. I know they're not good for me. I'm not changing my behavior. I'm going to text them back.
Right.
This is why someone can say, I know I need boundaries. Anna, I know I need boundaries in my life. And yet I still say yes to all the things. You know it. You have the insight. You have the knowledge. You know it. And yet you're not, there's no behavior change, right? This is why someone can say, I know I need to rest. I know I'm burned out. I know I need to rest. And they're still overworking. It's not because they're not smart or they're dumb. They're quite the opposite. It's because under stress or old patterns feel more believable than new choices. So when we come under some kind of stress, then we just want to go right back to what it is we used to do. I'm under stress. This is a hard week, going right back to drinking during the week and, and numbing out.
Right.
I know not to do that. I've been in therapy around this. I'm not making behavior change. Why is it? Because I'd rather be with the devil I know versus the devil I don't know. And I know this
Right.
one.
Because I feel like I have some control over that,
Yes.
even though
Yes.
it's not good control.
Right.
Interesting.
Okay. So what do these patterns give us? We'll start to wrap up, but let's end with what do they give us? This is where the honesty has got to deepen inside of you. All right. So sometimes people go back to what hurts them because it also does give them something. That's the hard truth. It does give you something. So acknowledge that hard truth for yourself if that's you, right? Maybe it gives you that familiar role, a sense of purpose, the illusion of control. It's an illusion of control. And we will go hard on that one. Some of us will want to die on that hill, right? A kind of intensity that feels like aliveness in a relationship with these bad relationships I keep getting into because that it's intense. I love the intensity. Helps me to feel alive. Temporary relief from emptiness. I keep repeating these patterns. It does. Because underneath, at the core, deep inside of me, is a sense of emptiness. Or the fantasy. I cling to the fantasy. Or it's my identity, and I know how to perform in that identity. I know how to do it, right? And sometimes this painful pattern, it's tied to an old hope that we had for ourselves, right? Maybe this time I'll finally be the one. I'll finally be the one who's chosen. Maybe this time I'll finally be enough for me and for them. Maybe this time it will turn out differently. This reminds me of the play Cabaret. Maybe this time I'll get, I'll get what I didn't get before. Maybe this time I'll get it, right? That's just deeply human for all of us.
Yeah. It's like
so
a
human.
false sense of hope.
But maybe this time it'll change, right?
It's like buying a lottery ticket. Like this is going to be the time that it's going to go
maybe this
my
time
way. Yeah.
I'll hit the lottery. A lot of repeated pain in our lives is actually repeated longing. We just have this repeated deep sense of longing for something for someone, something, and it's inside of us, right? That's why it's so hard to break for us as humans, because you're not just letting go of a pattern. You often have to grieve the hope that you attach to it. I'm going to say that again. You're not letting just go of just an old pattern. You're having to grieve the hope that you attach to those old patterns. And it's really a grief process. And you're finally just letting go of that heavy bag. I'm going to let go. I'm going to drop it now.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. Okay. So what we're going to do in part 2 is we're going to talk about why we keep going back to what hurt us and what people get wrong. So what most of us get wrong about breaking patterns. All right. And then we're going to go into, what breaking patterns in your lives, what it actually requires of you. Okay. So we're going to get into it. And at the very end, I'm going to give you your power moves. All right. So now we're going into we're staying with insight, but I'm going to go into what you need to do. And I'm going to give you power moves in next week's episode. Okay. So if you want to work with me, you know how to get on, a call with me, email me, hello@AnnaMarcolene. Let's get on a call together. If you're looking for coaching, let's do a discovery call. Okay. And I have group coaching coming up again, a new cohort starting. Email me if you're interested in that. It take you 2 seconds. Hello to Anna Marceline. You're in your emails every day. Most of you email me if you're interested in the group coaching, and that will fill up. Okay. So you may have to get on the waiting list, but I want to see you in there. Okay. And there's wonderful work to be done in there. And then I have something special going on for that next cohort. You're going to get something special, which I haven't done before. So if you're curious, you want to know more about it, email me. I'll give you information on that. Okay. And as always, thank you. Thank you. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast with 5 stars. It makes all the difference in the world. Please, that could be your give back. Okay. If you have found any value in this podcast, let that be your give back to us. I so much appreciate it. Okay. Mad love. Next week, we're doing part 2. Until then.